Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Next Experience Academy. Today, we're going to be talking about the standard record page. We're going to go through some UI Builder and Workspace information. And first off, we're going to start with a little bit of housekeeping. Well, actually, before that, we're going to introduce our speakers. So my name is Maria Gabriela Ochoa Perez-Wechter. I'm an outbound product manager on the Platform Web UX team. I basically work to help you guys learn more about my products, and they are Next Experience, Theme Builder, and UI Builder and Workspaces. Joining me today is my lovely coworker.
Hey everybody, my name is Brad Tilton. I'm also an outbound PM on the Platform Web UX team covering similar products to Gabby, and I'm excited to share about Standard Record Page today.
Thank you so much. Now let's get on to the housekeeping. Remember, please use the Q&A for questions. It helps me gather up the questions to post them after the session. Be sure to use the chat for comments. Again, Q&A for questions, and this session is being recorded, and the slides and video will be made available at a later date. These sessions are for you. Please take the time to ask Brad all the questions that you ever wanted to ask Brad. It is a great time. It's not just a presentation. We'll be going into the product and showing you guys an awesome demo, and we will be back soon. Our next session is going to be February 21st at 11 a.m. Eastern. We also have a quick announcement to make. We're going to be merging with the Conversational Interfaces Academy. You may be familiar with this, but we have a lot of live on ServiceNow events that are all academies for a whole bunch of different topics. I'll have a slide at the end of the presentation to go over that. But the Conversational Interfaces Academy will be merging with the Next Experience Academy and the AI Academy. So you know our academies are on the third Wednesday of every month at 11 a.m. Eastern. And the AI Academy is every other Tuesday starting January 9th at 11:30 a.m. Eastern. My awesome coworker, Semyukta here, is going to be joining us about every other month. And we'll be going over conversational interface topics at those times. The next slide is going to contain a little bit of a preview on what our year is going to somewhat look like. This is subject to change, but you can basically see today's topic. The next couple of sessions, we're going to be going over what's new in Washington, and then we're going to trade off between topics moving on from there. So we're going to be showing you guys a whole bunch more information in this academy for this year, and I am very excited for this change. And now I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Brad to begin our journey into standard record pages.
All right. So we will go ahead and start with the safe harbor. We may make some forward-looking statements and obviously don't make any purchasing decisions on what we talk about that's going to come out in the future. Because it may or may not actually happen. I do want to address a question in the chat from Mateen about SRP being read-only. The page collections are not read-only, and we're actually going to show in the demo today how to add to the page collections. So we'll go over that. So we'll talk a little bit about workspaces, and then we'll get into standard record page and page collections. So just to kind of set the groundwork here, we've got our Next Experience UI framework, and on top of that, there's really two different paths of workspaces. So we ship more than 50 workspaces by default. And those are all the out-of-the-box workspaces, and to edit those, you can use workspace configuration, which happens a little bit through the classic environment, and then also UI Builder. If you have App Engine Studio access, you can create custom configurable workspaces, and you can use Workspace Builder, which is a part of App Engine Studio, to help you configure those, but you can also use UI Builder for those. So the important part of this slide is that our out-of-the-box workspaces don't work with Workspace Builder. They're mostly already configured anyway. One other little piece of Workspace setting the stage for a long time, Agent Workspace was the only type of workspace we had. I believe we came out with it in Madrid or New York. And it's an older technology. It was kind of our first stab at workspaces. They are replaced by configurable workspaces. So in Quebec, we came out with configurable workspaces where you can use UI Builder. Spoiler alert, they're a lot more configurable than agent workspaces, which is why we were real creative and named them configurable workspaces. This is our recommended solution if you're going live with a workspace. We absolutely want you to use a configurable workspace and not an agent workspace. We're also starting to deprecate the different agent workspaces. So that deprecation schedule is in the doc site. If you look at the Vancouver documentation, we will tell you, I think, up to 2 or 3 releases ahead if we're deprecating things. And I think most of those workspaces get deprecated between Washington and Xanadu. So now's the time to start looking to migrate from an agent to a configurable workspace. Where do you get started with a workspace? We want you to start with our configurable workspaces that we ship. We're shipping more than 50 as of Vancouver, and most of our product lines have a workspace. CSM, HR, ITSM, ITOM, they all have workspaces at this point. Service Operations Workspace is a configurable workspace. So that's what you should be using for any ITSM or ITOM use case. And we do want you to do that. If you have a custom app use case, you can use App Engine Studio and Workspace Builder to build out your own workspace. If you have, number 3 is an edge case. So if you have a custom app use case, but you're not licensed for App Engine Studio, you can create a workspace from scratch. And we did an academy in the fall, or I guess in Q4 of last year, where we went through how to create a workspace from scratch. It's a little more difficult and there's more work involved. Some workspace good practices here before we get into standard record page. Every workspace has its own documentation. I think we had a question about the repeater component in Service Operations Workspace. There's actually a bunch of repeaters that they use. But if you want to update the landing page of Service Operations Workspace, it works a little differently than some of the other workspaces. And so you should always go to that specific workspace's documentation before, and not just assume that everything works the same. So we've got different application engineering teams building out these different workspaces, and they're making decisions on what's best for their customer base. So, an agent using CSM may work a little differently than an agent using incident. And so those workspaces are going to work a little differently as well. So look at that documentation. A lot of our workspaces also have guided setups. And so you can use guided setup to, I should have closed all my messaging apps. You can use guided setup to configure these workspaces. And we want you to extend those workspaces. So you can create new pages. You can create different variants of existing pages, all within these out-of-the-box workspaces. So you cannot clone a workspace. You can't copy a workspace. We want you to use our out-of-the-box workspaces. So I think I've said that enough time now, enough times to where it should drive home. All right, so what we're here for today is a standard record page and page collections. We're going to be mostly in Service Operations Workspace today with the standard record page. But at this point, most of our major workspaces have uptaken our standard record page functionality at this point, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. So when we talk standard record page, what we're really talking about are presets and controllers. So presets and controllers, this was a concept that we introduced in the Tokyo release. So about a year ago, a little over a year ago, we introduced it in Tokyo. And what it is a preset is basically just a pre-configured or a pre-built configuration for a component. So in the screenshot here, we've got the heading component. And one of the pieces of feedback we heard with configurable workspaces when we released them in Quebec was that forms were really hard to build. So if you wanted to build your own form instead of using a template, they were kind of hard to work with because so many of the form components have kind of complex data binding. And generally, you're always using these components with the same data resource and binding the same things. So we came out with preset-enabled components. So a preset-enabled component, when you drag it onto the UIB canvas, you get the option you see here on the right to select a preset. And when you select a preset, it's going to go ahead and map outputs from your data resource automatically into the component. And it will also configure events for the component as well. So it's a way to kind of reduce the time it takes to build out some of these pages. You can override these presets. So if you scroll down where you're selecting a preset, you can say none, and then you can configure the component yourself. So you're not tied to presets with a preset-enabled component. Along with presets, we came out with controllers. So controllers are a way, are a new type of data resource, and controllers go with presets. So when you add a preset to a page, when you add a preset-enabled component to a page, if you go with the preset, it'll automatically add the controller to the page and do all your mapping for you. They get automatically added. And then we're going to work a little bit more with a controller in the demo today. So again, you don't have to use a preset. If you have a preset enabled component, you can just tell it not to use the preset. And then once you have a controller on the page and you go to add a component, we do highlight all of the preset enabled components that'll go with that controller. So you kind of know, if I drag this onto the page, it can be automatically configured. So presets and controllers. So what do presets and controllers have to do with the standard record page template? So standard record is a template that we have. And if you use this template, it's going to be using controllers and presets on the page. So at this point, most workspaces are using the standard record page template, which is nice. And we'll go into a little bit more about, what's nice about this template. And one of the things is that it uses the tabs component. So if you use that standard record page template, you're pretty consistent using tabs everywhere instead of the older contextual sidebar component and the older tabs component. So you're using the new tabs component for both your horizontal tabs, kind of your main tabs where the details are, and then also the sidebar tabs. And then this screenshot highlighted in green is one way you can tell whether a record page is a standard record page or not. If it has a sidebar tabs, then it is generally a standard record page. And we'll get into the instance and look at that a little bit as well. All right, so what's one of the ways that you can work with the standard record page? Page collections is one of those. So a page collection is basically a group of globally available pages that you can use across experiences and across pages and experiences. That being said, generally in practice, you're probably using a page collection or, the page collection and experience, or maybe a one-to-one relationship, but you can use them across experiences. We also refer to page collections as extension points. These, if you look at the table name, it's actually extension points. So it's a way for you to go in and add functionality to right now, primarily a record page without owning that record page. So we had a question earlier about that that we'll go into a little bit deeper. And you can see in the screenshot here, when you open UIB, you get a list of all your experiences. And then underneath that, you get a list of all the available page collections. We're going to be working primarily with the service operations workspace page collections, but you can see some of the out-of-the-box ones in the top screenshot here, where you've got sidebar tabs and then the overall record tabs. So you can open up those page collections, add a page to it, and then work with that without having to duplicate any pages into new variants. All right, and with that, we're going to go ahead and jump into our demo.
Can we hit a couple of questions real quick?
Yeah.
It looks like we have kind of a philosophy question, but if a preset and controller have 99% of what you need, can you customize the rest of the 1%?
So I guess to answer that question, so all a preset is it automatically maps something from the controller to the preset. So you can take most of the mappings and then go in and remove one of the mappings. I think we can look at that, but I believe that's possible. It's not an all or nothing thing. So there's that one.
I'll go for it if you want to read it.
Yeah, I can look through some of these. Is there a way a user can save his settings, filters, groups, and similar? So in a workspace, there is a My List feature where you can go in and kind of save your filters. We also, as of, I think, Vancouver, we added more session-based functionality. So if you do something in a workspace, close it out and open it back up, we're storing more session data for a user, so things should be more consistent across across sessions. If you've changed the width of something on a record page, when you go back to it, it should stay like that. Whereas previously we didn't persist a lot of those things. Performance, we're always making performance strides. That's a priority for us just about every release. And so initial load, we do a lot of caching, but the first time you load a workspace or a page, because it's not cached yet, it may load a little slower. We're pretty focused on that initial page load though, and reducing that initial page load time.
But if you have a specific performance issue, we do suggest that you reach out to support and try to get that troubleshooted.
Troubleshooted. Yeah, that's a good, I don't know. And then another performance thing, there's a Next Experience Developer Tools Chrome extension. And so we have done that. We've kind of touched on that in a previous Academy and on our U&I Builder live show. But that Chrome extension does performance profiling. So if somebody says something is slow, you can load up that Chrome extension and then, run it when you're loading a page and save that, and then it'll do comparisons for you. So that's a pretty helpful tool to have. Again, it's called Next Experience Developer Tools, and it's available on the Chrome web store. Right now, it is only a Chrome extension. All right, let's get into Service Operations Workspace before we look at page collections and open up the new standard record page. So in the November store release, Service Operations Workspace had an update, and they added a standard record page to the workspace. So if we scroll way down, we'll see SRP record here. And so a little bit about the store. We generally have our store releases coincide with if the store release coincides with a family release, we automatically uptake a lot of store apps. So when you upgrade to Washington, you will get the store version of Service Operations Workspace that coincides with Washington. But in the off months, so we release on the store 4 times a year. 2 of those coincide with family releases. And the 2 that don't coincide with family releases, you will have to manually update those workspaces. So I think the newest version of SOW is like 4.1.0 or 4.0.1, which came out in November. I think you have to be on Vancouver patch 3 or 4 to get it, but I would highly recommend updating to that version because you do get the standard record page. So we had a question come in. What's the difference between standard record page and record S&C? Standard record page uses presets and controllers. We just talked about this a bunch previously. but presets and controllers, and then it also uses the tabs component. So if I am looking at, here, let's first add some demo data here. But one way to tell if I'm using a standard record page is if I am using the tab component for the sidebar. So here we see that the sidebar is a tab component and it's calling this page collection. And so let's go ahead and add, oh, I have to do this. And we will add some parameters here. It's going to give me an incident. Let's hit apply. Got it. All right, now we get some content on the page. So a couple of things about this. So you can see that we've got two main tab components here. So one of them is this main tab. I guess we have a main tab and a sidebar tab component. So we've got main tab here. And then in that main tab component, we've got a number of different things. So we've got some page collections, we've got some related lists, and then we have the main details tab. So what this lets us do is we've basically got page collections for all of the different positions in the tabs. And so if you want to add additional tabs here, you can go into whichever page collection you want to add something to and add a page to that page collection, and more tabs will show up. So the same thing works with the tab sidebar, and that's where we're going to be doing the demo today. But if you want to add something to the sidebar, you can do that here. And so you can, so the reason that's important and the reason we call these extension points is because I can add tabs up here or to the sidebar without duplicating this variant and owning the page. So I can add tabs, but I can still get updates to the page. There are things that you may want to do to this page that do require you to duplicate this page into a new variant and own your new variant. But just adding something to the sidebar or adding a tab, you can do that without owning the page. All right, so let's go ahead and get into our demo today. So I'm going to scroll down here to my page collection section, and what we're going to do is add some sidebar tabs. And so I'm going to click into sidebar tabs top. And then we're going to do this in global. I just want to call that out. I wouldn't normally do this in global. I would do it probably in whatever's going to make it easiest for me to manage my development. So that's probably my own scoped app. Since we're not duplicating anything, if I was duplicating a variant, I generally want to work in the scope of the original variant that I'm duplicating. But in this case, we're going to create something net new. And so I'm not copying anything over, and I'm not going to run into cross-scope issues. So let's go ahead and create a new page. And where's my... I have some instructions that I need to use here. All right, so we are going to create a new page. We are going to call it, let's go caller related incidents. I should tell what our goal is here. So one of the really common requests we get is how do I show caller related incidents to sorry, I just got a text while I was trying to talk and I cannot multitask. So caller related incidents. So if I want to see other incidents from the same caller, this is one way to show that in the contextual sidebar without really having to own anything on the page. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to hit continue, and we're going to create this page. And there it is. And then one thing is I should not have called it default. So it's generally a good idea to name your variants. I probably will never create another, I'll probably never create another variant for this, but just in case, it's a good idea to have your variants named something that makes sense, just in case you want to, create a new one down the road and you don't have to remember what's the difference between default and something else.
And a really fun feature of variants is for those of us who might be newer to workspaces in the crowd, is that you can use variants to show different types of things and pages to different audiences. So if you want your tier 1 or tier 2 to see different versions of the same page, you can do that using the audiences and the variants. And what's really awesome is that in the page that he was showing before, you're able to see the order of your variants. If you had multiple of them, it will be in order under that page variants tab.
That's right. All right. Oh, and then the last thing that we need to do is we need to give this page an icon to have it show up in the contextual sidebar. We learned that the hard way last week when we were messing around with this on a live show. Let's go ahead and do that here. So I'm going to open the actual page collection record. And this kind of shows you on the back end, you can see that it is an extension point. And then what we're going to do is add an icon. That's not something that UI Builder does quite yet.
And like Brad said earlier, we're working on making the experience in UI Builder better and better with each release. So as UI Builder evolves and grows, we're going to see a lot of these experiences and things that we have to configure outside of UI Builder, ideally making their way into UI Builder in the future. Brad, could we zoom in, please?
Yes. Oh, here. There we go. So the extension point here, you can see that these are all of the different page collection pages, and then this is the one we added. And so I think, what's the name of the... I want to use... go list fill. All right. And then back in UIB, just go to the editor. And I guess let's check and make sure that that shows up in Service Operations Workspace. So I'm going to open a record.
And like Brad said, if you went through all these steps and set up your page and your page collection, but when you reach your record page, it does not show up on the list on the right side, like he's about to show, what you're probably missing is that icon. So make sure you go back into that record and add in the icon. It will not be on the form view, the icon field, it'll be on the list view of that table. This is kind of what caught us off guard when we first were testing this out.
All right. So we had a question, where can we find a list of the available icon names? I can't remember if we have that in the doc somewhere, but there's an icon component that lets you see all the names. And then we have some more stuff coming in the future that helps out with that. So we can see that my icon does show up here. And so we do have this page. It doesn't have any content on it yet, so it's going to show this, but we can go ahead and add content here. So first of all, we're going to give it some test values. So input table and input sysid. It already has some test values, so that's helpful for us.
I've added the icon gallery link to the chat if anybody wants to get it.
All right, so the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to add a new data resource. And one of the things when we go to add a new data resource, you can see that there's some inherited data resources on this page. And this is a really important part of page collections, is that the way that a page collection communicates bidirectionally to the parent page is through the controller. So through this form controller, we have access to everything that the form controller has, so all of the form information. And then we also have access to all of the form controller's events. So I can pull data into my subpage, and then I can interact back with the parent page through an event. And we're going to do that in a little bit in the demo. But it only works with controllers. There is no other way to pass data into the page collection page or get data out of the page collection page. It only works with a controller. So if you take another step from there, you'll realize that really page collections are only useful on pages that are using controllers, which right now, as of Vancouver, is basically just the record page. However, we are adding more preset and controller enabled components to other things in the future. So in future releases, you'll see other components and other types of pages that will be able to use this. Also, right now you cannot create your own controller, or we don't have any tooling for you to create your own controller. I always say you can't do something and then some crazy developer figures out how to do it, and I'm wrong. So there's not an easy way to create your own controller. So we're going to use the lookup records data resource.
Hey, Brad, quick question.
Yeah.
Am I able to add a sub page in the contextual sidebar without creating a variant of the record page?
Yes, that's what we're doing right here. So I have not created a variant of the record page. We are creating a page within the page collection, and it's going to show up. So when I was going through all the tabs, that's what you do. You create a page within the page collection. So I have not duplicated any variants on this call so far. And the controller is a type of data resource, and it does run server side. To answer that question. All right, so what we're going to do here is we are going to run this against the incident table. And what I want to do is I want to find any other incidents from the same caller. So I'm going to say caller is, and then I'm going to switch to data binding here. And we're going to go data record, right? So this is the parent page's record controller. And I think I want form dot fields dot, and I wish it was a little later and I could show everybody how this looks in Washington safe harbor. Caller ID dot value, right? So this is going to get me the sys-ID of the caller from the parent record. And then also we don't want to return the parent record there. So.
And the way that he's doing this is Brad has done this a million times. So he's got this kind of memorized, but basically the dot walking structure that he's pulling from is from the data resource data structure that you can kind of see below his window. You can just dot walk through that entire JSON structure, and it will end up providing you the information that he's using right now. So it's not like it's coming out of nowhere or he's making it up as he goes. It's currently a little bit difficult to identify where those all come from, but it's definitely doable.
Yeah, and just for the record, Brad is not doing this from memory. I have it all written down. So
sorry,
looks
Brad.
like I'm moving very quickly. It's nothing special. I just practiced it beforehand.
He's just very well prepared. Nice.
Yeah, every now and then I get prepared for something. All right, so we're going to return a couple of additional fields here. Short description and come on. All right, and so I can see my output here. So we are returning a number of data resources. So yep, here we've got number, short description, and value, I think is what we're mostly going to want to use. So now I have my my results returned. We are going to do some work on the page. So I'm going to add a single column component. We are going to add some padding here so it looks okay. Why can't I add padding there? This is where I'm adding padding. Let's go large. And then within that, I'm going to add a stylized text component. And so I added the stylized text component. It is a preset enabled component. So it's telling me, hey, we went ahead and added this with the preset, but you can remove it. So I'm going to say, got it. And I'm going to go down and I'm going to remove.
Don't forget, we have to test and see if we can change one thing from a preset.
Oh yeah, we'll do that. We'll do that in a minute. So we're going to call this caller related incidents. We're going to make it an H2, and this is consistent with the way that the other page collection pages do this. They have H2s at the top. And then we are going to we're going to add a repeater component here. So I'm going to add a component after. And a repeater is really, it is an incredibly simple component. It's just an iterator. So it just lets you take a data set and it just repeats whatever array you pass into it. All right, so we are going to pass in the results of our lookup records data resource. And there's an easy way to do that where I can just hit copy.
And remember, do as we say, not as we do. Make sure you rename your data resources.
And it did not copy. So that is a fail. I think we fixed that though, results. All right, so we've got our lookup records results. We know that that's an array of objects, so I've passed that in there. We're also going to enable styles on this repeater because I want to set the width to 100%. So it goes the full page. And then within that, we're going to add a card-based container. And one of the reasons you use a card-based container is because it's clickable. So another question about creating a subpage for a record page that you can't edit, that's what we're doing right here. So we have not duplicated any variants so far. We're just adding something in the sidebar. All right, so now we're going to do something kind of fun, or at least I think it's fun. So I've got my card-based container, and one of the things I can do is I can make it interactive. So I'm going to give it a click event. And I think I want to set that to medium. And then let us go ahead and add an event handler. So when the card gets clicked, I'm going to go in, and the form controller from the parent page has a ton of event handlers. So I can do all sorts of things. I can add form messages. I can add field messages. I can set field values. I can open and close modals on the parent page. So this controller data resource has a ton of stuff in it. But the one we're going to use is, what's it called? Relay open record. And so with this, what we're going to do is I'm going to go incident. So what we want to do is when I click on one of these, I want to open that record as a sub-tab on the incident that I'm on. And so the sysid is going to be at item. So if you're inside of a repeater, you have the item object available to you. So item.value, and we want row data, and then unique value is the sysid of the record. And I believe that's all we need there. So I'm going to hit add. And so again, what we're doing is we're using the parent records controller and then using one of its event handlers. All right, so within this container, we're just going to add a couple of pieces of data. The first one, here, let's see. So again, I can just undo one of the presets and do my own thing with it and leave the other presets. For this one, I don't want to do that. So we're going to remove the preset altogether. I'm going to make it a div. And we're going to go item.value.number.display value. All right, so we have a number, and then I'm going to duplicate that, and we're going to show the short description. One thing to note is that the repeater is only going to show you one record on the page, and that's mostly for performance purposes, so that we don't pull as much data onto the page and make the stage sluggish. All right, so I think we're ready to go ahead and test this, I think. So let's go ahead and save it. And let's go back to this page, and I'm going to do a hard refresh. So I'm going Command-Shift-R, which clears the cache for this page and does a refresh. And so we should see a list of records show up on the right here. Well, it's assuming that David Miller, yeah. So we've got my list of incidents here. We've got David Miller as the caller. So if I click on one of these, should do something. That's the one we're on. I always do that. It's not even the top one. There we go. So the one we're on was already open, so it didn't do anything. But you can see that I clicked on another one, and this is another incident for David Miller here. And you can see this actually showed up as a sub-tab on the incident record, right? So I've got, I've got that here. If I opened up another one, these would all be sub-tabs on this incident record. There's another event handler, I believe, on the controller that would open it up top if you wanted to. But I kind of like the organization of this, where it's all showing up on the incident record there. All right, so let's go back. We have a couple of questions. That's kind of the end of the demo. I have a couple of challenge things that we can try if we have time that I haven't actually practiced, but should work. But let's go ahead and answer some of these questions. So somebody asked about Ajax calls in the Next Experience framework. Yeah, we do not support Ajax calls from UI Builder. So if you have a client script that's using Glide Ajax, that should still work. If that form shows up in a workspace, you should still be able to do that. But in UI Builder, anytime you're interacting with server data, we want you to be using data resources. And so we don't want you to use a script and do your interaction through a script. One of the nice things about using data resources is when you come in and look at a page, you can see all of the different ways that somebody's interacting with data in one pane here. And so you don't have to dig through client scripts and things like that. The next one, is it planned to sort stuff in a list? The client script. Oh, so if sorting like this list, that's a good question. I don't think we have any plans to change how that works. Somebody wanted a demo of how to pass test values to a page collection page. It's just this test values selection up here. So I'm just passing incident and a sys-ID. And I'm getting those values from the SOW record controller. I could get them from the form controller if I wanted to, but this actually pre-populated for me when I added a page in this page collection. Can a subpage be created for displaying multiple locations on the record page? So you could have a page collection show up in multiple places, but you would have to add that page collection in different places. So if we go back to the SOW page here, and open up the record page. Remember that wherever the page collections are directly referenced on this page, so you can't have a page show up in multiple spots without owning this record page, if that makes sense. So we've got the main tabs, where we have the different page collections. So anything I create in these page collections is going to show up in that spot. If you wanted to add something in multiple places, you'd have to own this page and add the page collection to those different places. What's the difference between the SOW page controller and the form controller? So the form controller is a standard controller across all record pages. It's got a ton of stuff in it. So it's got all sorts of things, and it has a ton of event handlers. The SOW record controller is something the SOW team built specifically for this record page. So it's got a table and a sys-ID. Again, it's specifically for this record page that the team is using. So we don't have every data resource documented, because I think we have like 500 or something like that, and they all have different purposes and things like that.
So if I'm getting that correctly, the SRP record page is being adopted by multiple workspaces, but the SOW record controller is only for the instance of it in the SOW workspace.
That's correct. Yeah. So the standard record page, most workspaces have uptaken the standard record page at this point, but they may have different flavors of it. Like SOW has, 4 different page collections they call on this page, where the other workspaces, it's not the same. So again, every workspace is different. There are different engineering teams building the workspaces that have different requirements, and the people use these different workspaces differently. How many times did I say the word different there? So we had another question about the Washington release. We can't really talk about it yet, but I think on Tech Now at the very beginning of February, they're going to highlight some Washington, some of the Washington release highlights in terms of workspaces and UIB, and then we will absolutely have some academies and other things where we go deeper into what's new in Washington.
Our February and March academies are going to be dedicated to what's coming out in Washington, so be sure to come back and stay tuned. It seems like people just would like to use the rest of the time to keep asking questions. I think we're doing great.
That's totally fine. So some more Q&A. If a subpage has subpages, can we pass the controller to the nested subpages? That's a good question. You could try it. I don't know that off the top of my head. I would probably try to stay away from nesting subpages because it seems like it would add a lot of complexity, and I'm not really sure what it gets you. But I would test that out. I don't know off the top of my head. Can I pass a dynamic parent table name and record to a subpage? Again, the only thing that the page collection page has access to are the controllers. So you can't pass anything into a page. It just has access to whatever it is in the controller. So all of these outputs, your subpage would have access to. But it doesn't have access to like parameters up here. Yeah, so one question again, the standard record page, every workspace is on a different timeline. Most of them have adopted the standard record page. They've done it at different times. SOW did it in the November store release. I believe the November store release of SOW, it's like 4.1.0. I think it does require Vancouver patch 4 or later. Any other questions? Let's go back to the...
If you could explain, like I'm 5 years old, what is a controller?
A controller is a type of data resource. So it's a type of data resource that works exclusively with components. I don't think we have time to get into the definition of a data resource. The UI Builder Fundamentals course is a good primer if you're new to UIB and not sure what those things are, but a data resource, basically a way to interact with the server. We have one more question. Can a subpage return data to a parent page? Again, a subpage can only interact with a parent page through the controller. So it can access all of the data in the controller data resource. And then those controller data resources also have a lot of event handlers. And so that's another way that they can interact with the parent page is they pass data through event handlers. So I believe one of those might be updating a client state parameter, but I'm not sure. So we had another question that I don't quite understand. Extends SOW at the lowest possible point. I don't really know what that means, but feel free to ask that question out on the community and I can take a look at it. But for the few minutes we have left, we do have a number of resources available. The Next Experience community I just mentioned, we monitor that community. And anything that I can answer, I usually try to answer. It is a lot more active than it used to be. But that's and then on our community, we have our COE. There is is there any guidance on UX patterns when using components? So yeah, this is a good question. So example in HTML, when to use radio versus checkbox. So you would follow all of your standard usage like usage patterns. You'd just be using whatever component makes sense. And then within an individual component, there is a ton of usage information on the developer site for each component, what to do and what not to do with that component. We do have a UI Builder Fundamentals course on Now Learning. We do a UNI Builder live show on the Developer Program YouTube channel. It is the second and fourth Thursday of every month at 3 o'clock Central, which is my time zone. So everybody gets to adjust to me for this one. And then our Next Experience Academy, you are watching it. And so that's also on the community YouTube. Live on ServiceNow is the series that this academy and all of our academies are a part of. You can use this QR code to access all of those sessions. And then we do have a number of different academies of which we're a part of. They're all platform academies here. So those are available.
And Brad briefly touched on this, but if you really enjoy more in-depth UI Builder and Workspace kind of information, and you want a more casual experience than this academy, you should definitely check out UNI Builder Live. Like he said, it's on the second and fourth Thursday of every month. And it's definitely a much more technical, in-depth look into this than the academies are.
All right.
And we will have a link to all the resources in the Q&A when I post this video.
Yep. So this will get posted. We'll have all the Q&A. We'll link to a lot of y'all are asking for different links. We will link to all of those things. So check out this post on the Next Experience Community Forum and we'll try to answer the questions that have come in here.
And again, thank you all so much for watching today and interacting. We had a lot of great questions in the chat. Be sure to tune back in next month on the 3rd of the month at 11 a.m. Eastern for the correct time zone. We're going to be going over what is coming out in Washington. So it's going to be a great show, and I hope to see you all there. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you, Brad.
Thanks all.